Hi, I'm Forrest. I actually work for a company called Condé Nast. We were CitizenNet before the acquisition, and we just don't have an updated brand deck. We sell magazines and stuff. Can you guys hear me back there? No? All right. I just generally don't speak loud. I'll do my best. We're not going to spend a ton of time. I've got like 2 slides with code on them, and it's not PureScript at all. It's not functional programming. And what I wanted to talk about, as kind of as I was preparing this, is we've got something really different and interesting in production, and maybe 100 companies in the entire world use the language that we use. And I want to tell you that the language is awesome, and I probably would have a year ago, and I'm going to tell you that it's awesome today. But we've also been using this language for 2 years, and like a lot of things, we just heard Forrest tell us all the awesome things that functional programming can bring us. I kind of want to just be like a wet blanket and tell you that. All right, 1 second. So good. Can you hear me? I will do my best to speak into this microphone.
Maybe you can set it up higher. Maybe you can tweak that.
It's like in my mouth now. Can you hear me back there? Great. Okay. A real life look of shipping kind of an alternative language. It's just so good right now. What it's like to ship an alternative language to JavaScript and then have it in production for 2 years, and what kind of pros and cons come with that. And it isn't just this language, whether you're considering Reason or Elm or PureScript or any of these other compile to language, or even TypeScript, right? It's like when we ship something new and we think it's awesome, 2 years later, it's got problems. Everything does, right? And so we can, we hear all the good stories of functional programming and all the things it could bring us. So I just wanted to be a little bit of a wet blanket, bring it back to reality and say it's not the panacea, right? Like these guys that have been doing it for 20 years, they're smiling because they know. They're like, yeah, we were doing this 20 years ago. You guys might collect JavaScript stickers. I collect small children. They're all mine, I think. I hope. So you don't rip out and a language, we were using Angular at the time, and go with something as radical as PureScript or a purely functional, statically typed language for no reason, right? So we build applications on various APIs, the Facebook API, YouTube, Snapchat. We're an ad tech company, right? And so when YouTube every 6 weeks says, oh, we've got a new targeting field, right? That has to be presented into the UI. And these updates that ship regular, like sometimes without notice, we needed a way to keep up with it, and we didn't have, this is even before me, we didn't have front-end resources. It was a primarily back-end team at the time. And so they got together and like, we're gonna build something cool. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be really neat, and we're gonna, anytime that Facebook releases a new update, we're gonna just immediately present that to the user. And so we're gonna define forms in JSON. And we're gonna ship those down to the client, and Angular is gonna pick those up. It's gonna render them, it's gonna be awesome. How many of you guys know what this is? It's the devil. It's the JSON API spec. You guys ever hear of this? It's a way of kind of statically defining a typed data structure, and this gets shipped down to the client, and the client can pick this up and render out forms. There's like some more library code that turns this into fields. You say string, I'm going to render an input field. Then you build this, right? Like, years later, it never works out. Like the library that you use doesn't support batch functionality, and it doesn't support, when I insert this, I need an asynchronous request to validate 5 other fields, and then clear these 10, and then tab support on the other 4 fields or forms. Like, it just didn't support that, and so you end up with just a mess. This is the last code snippet I've got. This is a kind of sanitized snippet of code that's actually running into production at Conde. And I'd like to every time I see this, it just makes me laugh. I'm like, how did we even do this? This is a Python dictionary that has a JavaScript string that gets shipped down to the client and evaluated. But we couldn't just eval it, because eval is the worst. We wrote a custom JavaScript parser to support just Lodash expressions. And you guys have stuff in production like this too. This is no judgment. I thought this was a safe space. But it's a mess. Like, thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of stuff that looks like this to get dynamic forms rendering, right? And we just couldn't take it anymore. It was like, this is an albatross. Our PM would come to us and like, hey, can we get these radios moved here? And it's like 3 weeks. He's like, but it's some radios. And it's like, I have no idea how long it's going to take. 3 weeks could be conservative. I don't know. I'm not even joking. We lost the ability to not only maintain this thing, but to extend it, right? With little things. We couldn't, you change one line and forms stop rendering. We lost all confidence that any line of code that I wrote, I knew how it would behave in production. Absolutely none. And it was miserable. So we started looking around, right? It's like, what did good engineers do? Because we're clearly not some of them. And we looked at React at the time, and Flow, which was cool for a minute, I guess. We looked at Elm pretty seriously, and we looked at PureScript, and then Reason for 1 second. I saw the syntax, I was like, no. I think it's gotten better. I'm not actually sure. It looks like, no, we're not doing that. What was really intriguing about PureScript at the time was, one, it's component-based, like React, right? And I don't want to get into the flame wars between Elm and PureScript. I don't think there are any, but I don't want to start any tonight either. It felt really familiar, and it felt like a Ferrari engine that I couldn't outgrow, right? I could, it was very apparent to me that the things we wanted to do were beyond what Elm was going to allow us to do, if that makes sense. And I wanted components. I was like, we've been doing components for 30 years. Please don't take components away from me. And then they're like, we're taking them away. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. So we were like, this PureScript thing, yeah, let's just try it. And so we went to our boss, I was like, hey, this thing sucks. We might be able to fix it. He was like, do it. So we did. We shipped PureScript in production 2 years ago. And it's been a really crazy ride, good and bad. My colleague has a quote he's very fond of saying. He's like, there's two languages, the ones that people complain about and then the ones that no one uses. So you're gonna get a little bit of both tonight. So we'll start with the good. I think a lot of this, like Forrest hit on earlier, just the incredible things that not only functional programming will give you, but statically typed, pure functional language will give to you. And we got the confidence back. Like we could ship code, and I knew that when it compiled, like 99% of the time, I knew what I was going to do in production. I didn't worry anymore that I'm going to change this line of code, and I'm just going to break stuff. And I have no idea. There's no tests. There's no, like, when a compiler was like, "You're good," like I just knew I was good. And as we kind of started carving out these, large swaths of this Angular application, I think we're like up to like 80,000 lines of PureScript now. It gets better as the more of this Angular app that we move over. The more complexity that they throw out the front end, the better this language performs. The type system is awesome. Like you just, I can go into a file, change something, and it's like the compiler's like, yeah, you broke it here, go fix it. And just the complexity that comes with building like front-end applications, it's not fair. It's like, in some ways it's not fair. Like it used to be hard and now it's not. It's pretty incredible. The refactoring is amazing. I think, I pulled it, but just because I didn't want to have too many of these like code snippets or screenshots. We refactored and touched every component in our application twice in the span of a month. The first because we were like, yeah, we need a better free monad, and the second was like, that free monad sucked. And this is basically like the outer shell of the application, right? Everything runs through this part of the application. And we touched hundreds of files in a couple of days, compiled, and it was good to go. Like we make sweeping changes. It's not like, I'm going to ship this, it sucks, I'm going to come back, I can fix it, it's fine. I could, the total fear is gone. We can refactor hundreds of files, and it's not a big deal. I have the asterisk here because I don't actually know. And it depends on how you define this, right? I think like Elm was really famous for touting this, right? No runtime exceptions, and you're like, that's a lie. But then it's not, because I don't think we've had one. The asterisk comes from, there are times in which the server will break a contract where you would think that this is supposed to string, like we both agreed that this is a string, and then some developer goes in the database and they're like, yeah, I'm going to make it, it's going to be a null, right? And then it's not a not null column because the database is 20 years old. And then it comes back and then we're like, this was always a string, and now this form doesn't load. There's no runtime exception because it's well typed. Like we know that it failed, but then the user can't use it because the data is bad. So it depends on how you define it. Interoperability. I think this is one of the places that PureScript really, really shines. Right? And I'm not going to go on like an Elm tirade here, but I'm going to go on an Elm tirade. The whole notion of like setting up these ports to speak with JavaScript, like it's some kind of disease. I just felt like it was the wrong approach, and PureScript gets us right? Where we fundamentally rely on the Facebook SDK and the fact that it's, like 30 lines of FFI bindings to make this work, and now it's well typed, and I can use this and call it from my code instead of setting up this entire port structure and whatever, WebSockets, whatever it is. right? Like the FFI is easy and I can't understand like understate how important this story was for us, and I think for most companies. But we've been able to take not only just the FFI, but components that we've written and share them with React apps or with, sorry, I need to drink some water. I got caught in the mouth and it sucks. Sorry. With other Angular applications, which yeah, I just didn't think was possible, and then we did it, and it was awesome. The community. It is small, but it is filled with some of the most talented, passionate, intelligent, productive engineers that I've ever interacted with. A small community ships an incredible amount of code. Like it is incredible amount how many, like one person might, have 50 or 60 libraries that they, they publish and they update and they maintain. And they have always been there for us when we ran into issues, right? Like if you run into an issue with React, you don't get to hop into a Slack channel and the language of the creator of the language is like, hey, you just need a co-monad here. It's like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? They just, that community has single-handedly written some of the hardest parts of our application that we just didn't even know how to do. Right? They've been incredible to us. And it's fun, like writing in a purely functional language is challenging and fulfilling and interesting. And there are days where we would go home and we would get stuck on something and we would write code for 15 hours that day because we just wanted to figure out like how we could do this. It made front-end engineering like fun again, right? Where it's like, I want to learn about lenses and I want to learn about profunctors and I want to learn all these things. It just was really a revelatory for us. Right. So there was a lot of good, and I wanted to kind of get through that pretty quickly because I think a lot of people will tell you a lot of good things about the language that they use, right? And then the things that they ship. But I wanted to spend a lot more time on the bad things. Right? And this is not just for our language or PureScript. I think this applies for Elm or Reason or Kubernetes or Python 3 that we still haven't fully moved over to. Yeah, this guy laughs because he knows. That the newness wears off. The things that you thought were awesome and the promises that you read about in the blog post of the guy that wrote something and like shipped it and then went away, like he moved on to Go 2 years later, and he's on to something else next week. Like you still have to maintain this stuff, and so this is kind of a synopsis of some of the things that we didn't see coming. The learning curve. It is really hard. Some of the things that Forrest was going over, like they're hard. And then you're like, I need to learn monads. And you spend 2 weeks trying to figure out monads, and you're like, I need to learn profunctors, and then adjunctions, and then recursion schemes, and then the next thing, right? And it's this over and over and over again, and you think, I'm gonna get the bottom. And I'm just never hit the bottom. It's just never come. I don't even know if I know how to use this language. It's just like, and they're like, yeah, you could do that with type level programming. And I'm like, how is it that we've got 20 lines of code here and actually one of them are in the value level? You have 19 type level statements. I don't even know what that means. But that's kind of what you're dealing with eventually, is that this language is so powerful and so deep in academia that you just never feel like you hit the bottom. And it's fun, it really is. It's also really hard. It's hard because we lost the ability of a lot of the engineering talent that we had on our team to contribute to anywhere in the code base. there are a lot of other, you're really excited, you're pumped. You want to go learn this language and spend 20 hours a day doing it, that's great. But then the other guy's got family and the other women at the company, they want to go home after 8 hours a day and they don't want to spend the next 6 months of their life learning a new language. And they're just like, I'm not going to do it. And so we lost 60% of the engineers that we had to be able to contribute to any point in the code base, right? That was a big loss. And they were, there's the loss of being able to contribute, and then there's the loss of like, they don't trust the decisions that you make, right? There's the politics games that comes with this, is that they're like, you guys don't even know what you're doing. Like it creates rifts. And we're still working through those now. The learning curve was so steep too that we don't even know how to hire really anymore. Take that back. We've had to fundamentally change the way that we hire, right? We can't just come to a meetup and be like, hey guys, we're writing this cool thing. You guys want to come do it with us? Like there might be one person that's heard of your language, right? And the chances are that the engineers that you interact with across the country are in England or in Spain, right? And so we have had to distribute our team. We've got a great team, but it meant changing our culture. We no longer have a in-the-office culture. So that wasn't something that we foresaw. We thought we could train people, like they'll come in, people that know a little React and are competent in JavaScript, and we would try this, and it would take months and months to get them going on stuff because it was just a fundamentally different way of programming. And so it's just something that we didn't see coming. Performance. I always hate that performance benchmark of like, our React app is so quick. Look at how like we can render all these things. It's like, whose app even does that? Right? It's just no one's app renders. Most of our apps don't re-render the entire page every second. Right? So I always find that benchmark ridiculous. But it is true. Like Forrest talked a lot about the currying. Right? When you carry around curried functions, inherently your app is going to be a little bit slower. It takes a little bit longer to execute those. We're getting better at inlining those and creating, as a community, having the compiler do optimizations. But inherently, like, if you need to run an app that is the fastest out there, like, this language is not going to be for you. And that was a totally fair trade-off for us. Was like, users can only go through a form so fast. Community. It was in the good, but it's also in the bad. It's small. We did not get a chance to, hey, format, what is it, the form Java React library, formic? Like, that form library looks like, that looks dope. Let's just pull it in. It's like, let's go get a form library. Let's write a form library. We need a type ahead. Let's go pull one. Let's write one. And we rewrote, 30 or 40 components that most people would be able to just go get, right? And that story is better now if you're in PureScript on Condé's dime. But it wasn't, and the community is still small. There are things that you're going to want to do where you're either going to roll it yourself or you're going to have to, write some FFI. And that's fine. It's just a smaller community, and we did not place enough emphasis on how. We did not think enough about the inertia of the React community and JavaScript in general, right? That's fine. We'll just write it. But PayPal wrote one and it's better. We could use that. This one's a big one. It's like academic fetishism. What does that even mean? You guys have ever spent any time, I encourage you, just for funsies, you should head out to LambdaConf. like one of those. And it's like, you know, you're gonna spend an hour listening about adjunctions and, you know, it's just, we just crazy stuff like mathematics and you're like, it's fun, it's cool. And then I just want to write a form, you know, and you're like, it's not like I kid you, like, I'm gonna go grab a form validation library. And I'm like, okay, Phil Freeman wrote one, it's really awesome. Okay, how do I use this? Okay, you gotta use the free ring. What is a free ring? I'm like, okay, 2 hours later, I'm ready to use it. You know, and it's like a hole after a hole after a hole. And it's not like they're well, you know, named stuff that's intuitive. It's like mathematics, you know, it's like, okay, functor, what is that? Let me Google that. And we place such a, I mean, this is not PureScript in general, it's like functional programming in general, how close it is to mathematics. We're like, you know, back in the ivory tower. Like I need to write a type ahead, so I'm gonna read a paper, and then another paper, and then 15 papers on comonads until I can actually write a type ahead. And it is prevalent not just in PureScript, but in yourself. Like you're like, I wrote code a long time. I never once wanted to be like, you know what? What's in the C# library? Let me just open it up. I just want to look at the internals. Never. But every day, I'd be like, what is in this lens library? Let me just spend 6 hours reading what is in here. And it can kill your velocity. It really can. And it did for a long time. And it takes restraint to pull yourself out of teaching yourself to black box things. Like, I do not need to know what profunctors are today. I can learn that another day. I just need to write this form today. JavaScript phobia. It's funny because I'm here. We're scared of you. But part of the I think this is you know, the language compiles to JavaScript, so we're inherently tied. We're like brethren. But there is a large swath and people on my team and myself for a while, and it's like, oh, you know, I could use that FFI, but it might throw an error. So I'm going to write it in PureScript instead. I'm going to spend a month doing it now. And the product manager's like, well, why not just use that? And you're like, you don't understand these things. You don't even know, because it could cause a runtime exception, obviously. And it has taken a long time for us to kind of circle back. You know, I guess even now we're very introspective on this. How much should we have just leveraged this amazing community that you guys have built in just FFI stuff, right? Like we could contribute in other ways and not, you know, we could add more value by not implementing everything from scratch because we're scared that you guys write code that isn't very good, which may or may not be true. I mean, you guys did give us Angular, so it's just saying. But really trying to see the JavaScript community as a you know, as a good thing for us, and that we can build. I mean, the whole point is to have this really great statically typed functional language that can work in the browser and leverage all of these things, and yet so many of us are just really scared by it and choose to do it ourselves. So I didn't think that, you know, 2 years ago we would be in a spot where you know, we are so heavily invested in doing things from scratch and relying 100% on PureScript all the way down. I'm not necessarily convinced that was the right decision. I mean, it could have very well been that we should have used PureScript React, right, and leveraged React as the view library, and we could have built all of the business logic in PureScript, right? Like that could have been a very good approach. We didn't do that, but it could have been a good one. That's it. Brief. And I've seen this, and I think this is relevant because we're here, but I've seen this just in not only this language, but just all the tools, right? And that we've had Kubernetes in production now for a year and a half, and it's, you read the blog post, like this is gonna solve all of the things, and we're gonna do the microservices, and we're gonna ship them, and then you realize, oh man, there's still so much complexity, and it sucks, and it's like sucks in different ways. I thought I would share our story with you guys. So that's it. I don't know if there's